Afternoon and welcome to the CIW webinar. A couple housekeeping items. First of all, everybody is muted at this time. Please feel free to type your comments or questions in the question area on the GoToWebinar toolbar. Secondly, we will be leaving time at the end of the session for questions and answers. At that time, we will also be unmuting everybody so you can speak to us directly, or you will be able to still type in your questions and we can answer them by reading them to Stephen and having him answer them for everybody. So our topic today is hot web design skills. That will be presented by Stephen Schneiter, who is the certification specialist here at CIW. Stephen, it's all yours.
All right, thanks. Hello everybody and welcome. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening from wherever you are joining us this afternoon. And as Joe announced, what we're going to talk about this afternoon is hot web design topics and how that basically are skills, how it basically relates to web design and what we're actually doing. So what we're going to take a look at, if my slide here will change, there we go. What we're going to take a look at this afternoon is basically we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about what CIW is, who we are. Some of you, I look down the list of presenters or attendees, and some names are familiar with me that you've been on previous sessions or we've talked with in the past. Others are a little bit new, so you might be unfamiliar with us. So we're going to introduce CIW just a little bit, and then we're going to talk about some web design skills. Basically, what's going to help us make sure that our sites stand out above anybody else's. And then we're going to talk about the CIW curriculum, basically how the curriculum actually helps you to obtain a lot of these skills and to become a better professional designer. And then as Joe mentioned, at the end of that, we'll open the floor up for discussion and for questions. And if you have any questions that you had typed into the question session, Joe will take care of getting those out. And if you'd like to ask questions verbally and I get everybody unmuted, then we'll be able to do that as well. So let's go ahead and get started for just a minute. And the first question right off the bat is, well, what is CIW? And CIW basically is a skills-based education program. We provide a complete view, a complete approach to design and development. We offer both the curriculum, the courses, and the certification exams. And we're based off of standards. The curriculum is based off of standards. We work closely with input from both professional industry and then also from web standard organizations, and then also from the state career clusters here in the U.S. that governs job skills. We're vendor neutral. We prefer an approach that is going to focus in on the job skills that people really need to succeed in a job, as opposed to just one particular vendor's idea or application, as opposed to obtaining those skills. We also rely a lot on open source. We believe that skills are required for us to be able to succeed in the workforce no matter what type of tool that we're actually using. And competency-based, we do focus in on job skills and we'll focus in a lot of times on being able to complete those individual tasks on any particular project. We are a global certification. There's almost 1 million courses and exams that have been delivered worldwide throughout the CIW program with over 200,000 certified individuals. As I mentioned, the courseware and exams are created by experts in web design. We've got over a community of 200,000 web professionals, and we get input from these experts from around the world. We have curriculum that's focused in on university, community college, and high school environments. We believe on being able to give students the job-ready skills that they need to be able to be successful in the workplace. Examples of some of our partners that are implementing our curriculum: Kaplan Home Learning College in the UK, Western Governors University here in the United States, University of West Scotland, Tokyo University of Information Sciences. And here in the United States, we've got a lot of various high schools from various states, and we've partnered up with individual states' Department of Education, map their that they're teaching in your local schools around the CIW curriculum. We have an advisory board that's made up of both academic and industry partners, and we use this advisory council to provide us input for the type of skills that are needed for employees that are in the market looking for a job, and what type of skill sets they're going to have to be successful. And then our partners also help us with our certification exam creation and our courseware development. But when we take a look at our various partners that are working with us and providing us feedback, you might be asking yourself, why do they use CIW? And why should industry or academia be interested in using CIW? What is the big thing? What is it that we're all really looking for? And so basically we took the approach and asked web designers from around the globe about the most important skills that designers should learn. And now we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at some of that feedback that we received from them. And I think you're going to be surprised at some of them. The first area that we're going to take a look at is the essential design principles. And what are these principles that must be considered when we're building successful sites? There is so much technology available to implement on site design projects today, we can actually be harming our site if we try to include too much technology on our site. This brings us to what we refer to as the lowest common denominator, the LCD. We need to take into consideration what technology our target audience is going to be using. Our target audience is really key. Working with our customers, finding out what their needs are, what market they're trying to reach, and then understanding that audience and what type of technology they can use. What do they expect? What will benefit them? This includes things like browser resolution. It's great to think that everyone is going to be using 1366 by 768 or better resolution. But what if our audience isn't using such high resolution? This leads us to a case where, it can be important information that is not viewable on a screen, and our audience is not going to be able to view it without having to scroll either left and right or up and down. When it comes to making a good first impression and thinking about we want to think about using lower screen resolution, such as 1024 by 768. That may make a difference in the ability of attracting more customers or losing them on the first visit. I was at a site the other day, and when I pulled it up, it was very nice because it had this very nice splash presentation right up at the front. And I was like, well, what's the point of the site? What am I doing here? And it wasn't until later, and somebody said, well, didn't you see this content down below that? I said, no, all I saw was a pretty picture. And they said, well, scroll down, and you could actually see more of it. And sure enough, there was a lot more pertinent information down below my viewable area in my browser. And so we'd want to think about how could we really redesign that page just so that it was presented more information up front and taking up less space with just a pretty picture. Bandwidth also comes into consideration. What type of bandwidth will our audience have access to? How much data are we requiring the audience to download when they come to our site? It's not so much now a difference between, well, do they have dial-up access or do they have broadband access? I think Pew Internet, Life Internet Research has stated this year that less than 10% home Internet users are on dial-up anymore. And a large part of that is due to personal choice or preference as opposed to having the technology available. We've come a long way with technology being able to support broadband. But now it's a matter of not so much what are they using for connection, but how much information are we shoving down the pipe? Because now we have the ability to download whole movies via the Internet or large multimedia files, large flash animations, and these do take up traffic. So if we're in an office environment or a campus environment, we have peak Internet usage times during the day. And if we're requiring too much bandwidth space, then everybody suffers from that. And we're coming down, systems come down to a crawl. And if it comes to us where, we may be downloading too much from a particular site, or a particular site is offering too much information at one time, people may frown off, hogging up all of the bandwidth. So we could take simple steps like specifying the size of images within a page that can help a page make it more useful by loading quicker, okay? Or maybe not having such large multimedia files of accessing on the site that have to be loaded each time a page loads. And then simply thinking about how the page is laid out or structured will help us as well. Research shows that we typically read slower online than we do printed material. And some research shows that people will just scan content as opposed to actually reading it anyway. Therefore, it's really important to consider the typography of the site. How readable is the actual content? What fonts are we using? Can using different fonts actually improve the readability of the site? We need to organize content in a manner that it makes it easy for readability, and it flows. White space is a way of guiding flow and directing the visitor to the really important message that we want to get across. Site navigation is also really important to us and something for us to take into special consideration. Navigation has always been a key principle in good web design. If a visitor can find what it is that they are looking for fast and without any issues, then they're more likely to purchase our product or to come back to our site more often. More importantly, they're going to refer other people to our site so that they could find some information useful. There's been an old standard or an old saying about talking about the 3-click rule. I'm sure a lot of you have probably remembered hearing that before. Jeffrey Zeldman, a really popular web designer in today's society, wrote in one of his books that the 3-click rule is based on the way people use the web. And the rule can help you create sites with intuitive, logical, hierarchical structures. This rule was really invented to make designers more carefully consider their information architecture. How are we displaying information? Remember in our design process when we go out and we start working on mind maps and laying out how things are going to be organized, we're thinking and laying out our navigation at this point. And that's what this whole 3-click rule is actually talking about. It doesn't mean that visitors are never going to be able to see a page just because it takes them 5 clicks to get there. The key is to use the links and navigations to direct users in a way that makes them want to keep clicking and moving through the site. It's also been talked about, using, well, the 3-click rule simply applies from the home page, that you want to be able to get to a particular product or get to a particular location within 3 clicks. But actually, it's also talking about from anywhere within the site. So no matter where we are in the site, we need to be able to get to another major area of interest that we're looking for within 3 clicks from anywhere within that site. One tip, though, if you're going to use deeper navigation, okay, within a site, if we've got a lot of serious navigation in the site, it's a huge site, and we're really down inside of it, one of the big things that we can do to improve it is to be able to have a really good search tool, a search bar on the site. I can give you a couple examples. Think of Amazon and think of Barnes & Noble. 2 really great sites, have a lot of product, a lot of content, and one of the things that they provide for the user, for the visitor, is a great big search box right there at the top of their page for somebody to be able to go in and search. And that's always going to be there as part of our navigation for them to be able to get in there. And it prevents a lot of clicking. One comment that's up there is that 1 click is often too much. And yeah, we're a society of instant gratification when it comes to the web. We're going to a particular website just for us, just for what we need. And so some people say, I don't want to click. I just want to be able to find information. And yes, if I'm shopping for a product, I want to be able to click on the shopping cart and see my product, or if I want to look for just specific information there, I don't want to have to dig too deep for it. There's definitely a balance in there between how much information we have about a particular product on a single page. There's this theory that people don't want to read long articles. They want bite-sized information when they're online. So breaking up our content and making sure that we organize our content in readable sections is a way of getting people to understand and recognize and use that content to their benefit. So we want to be sure to break up content, especially like using header levels. Maybe we've got more content that we need to fit on a particular page, but if we break that content up into individual sections with nice headings, descriptive headings about that content, then people can scan through the material on the page, find the area that's of interest to them, and read that particular section. Of course, it's always imperative that we focus on the customer and the target audience all the time. We're to work for the customers. I'd always have students in the past that say, you know, I know web design. I know what I need to put in the site. What do they know? They don't know anything about design. You know, so my colors, my layout scheme look best. But in actuality, we're working for the customer. We need to work with them, provide them with technologies that support their needs. And it's always important to understand and to communicate with the customer as far as what the site is doing. Is it portraying their message the way they want it to? And then also getting that demographic information for the target audience. What type of target audience is going to be viewing this site? I'll give you another example, AARP website. If you go to AARP website and you look at it as opposed to many of the other websites that are out, how is that site structured? It's structured, its target audience is for you know, adults and adults, you know, 50 plus. And so, you know, it's very easy to navigate through. The font is a very easy to read font. The text size is increased just a little bit, again, helping readability. And there's multimedia on there that will help support, you know, we can read our content. We have audio cast on there as well as videos as well as text, so that everyone has the ability to move around. That implementation might not be perfect for a group of teenagers who are expecting high dynamic, high technology implement tools on the site to be used. So understanding this and working with the customer and understanding what type of technologies is best going to be used and understood by the target audience is really a big factor. Let's talk a few minutes now about HTML code and actually focus in on what is making or creating the pages that we're talking about. It's not written in stone that we have to use the latest, greatest web standard language for creating our pages for every single project. The important thing to remember is to be consistent. So if we start with one standard, we need to stick with it as we go through the whole project. We have to ask ourselves, what type of technology are we implementing with our site? If we want to maybe consider using XHTML, that's really great because it supports a lot of the AJAX technologies that are being used, asynchronous JavaScript and XML, which allows us to control a lot of the output and control the way browsers work and are rendering our site. So a lot of those features are really built into XHTML. So that's probably a really good language to stick with and to be using through. If we're just needing to create basic web pages, there's nothing wrong with using HTML 4.01. It works great and it works well. And for creating basic sites, it's a perfect solution. So I have a lot of people, teachers that I work with that, you know, tell me all the time, hey, I'm really good with HTML, but I've never really done anything with XHTML, so I'm really kind of leery of, you know, teaching students how to do this. And it's just like, you know, we're not creating, you know, a whole new project here, a whole new program. You know, start out with your HTML, work with it, and then bring in how XHTML may be different. There's nothing wrong with using HTML. Just if you're using it, stick with it, and then be sure to validate for it. Remember, it's what will meet your needs and will meet the needs of your customers and their target audience that's important. Biggest thing, as I've said before, is to be consistent throughout the site. That's such a huge necessity. One way of doing this, especially if we have members from other departments that are working on the design project with us, is to implement a style guide that spells out the formatting of the content and formatting schemes that we're using for our content. It lets them create the content that they want as long as they're following our basic style guidelines. Using a template is another way to quickly get content into the site. Templates are created using style guides or are made up of style sheets and allow you to simply enter in the content. Of course, you can find templates online all over the place. Even our GUI editors will have basic templates included in there. And these canned pages, as I call them canned pages, basically, are great for having a site up and running very quickly. And all of the pages will look identical, and we're just basically filling in the gaps in there. Commenting code is really kind of important. It's one of those simple little tasks that we do that a lot of times gets overlooked, and we forget to do that. It can be very helpful to us whenever we are coming back and revisiting a project to work on. If anybody's like me, I typically will go out and work on a project, and then I'll come back to it a few weeks later and I'll say, well, why did I do that? Why did I have that particular script or that particular code in there? And I can jump out to the code and read my comments as far as what I did with this. It's also common consideration to do if other people are going to be working on your project. For instance, if we're in academia and we have students that are working on particular projects, and then the next semester a new group of students comes in to work on the project, they can go in and read commented code. Same thing if we're in industry in a web shop and we're working on a site. Somebody else may be coming in and working on the project after us. We may be handing a project off. And it's good for somebody to be able to come in and follow up with that, follow up to see what comments that we had in there. We also can't forget there are different flavors of HTML or XHTML, whatever language that we're working in, strict, transitional, and frame set. Which one are we supposed to be using? Well, obviously, if you're going to be using frames, if you're designing a page with frames, and yes, frames still do exist. I saw a frame site the other day that somebody created as a reference site. They're quick and easy to set up, and they do still exist. So obviously, if we're using frames, then we'd want to use the frame set because that is the standard flavor that's going to define tell the doc types and tell the validators that in search engines and browsers, the page is actually designed in frames. So basically, again, we're being consistent through the site. So we're not going to use a different flavor for each page of our site. Whatever we start out with, version of HTML that we're going to start out with, we're going to continue using through the entire site. Graphical editors are great, but what code is actually being used in the background when we go in and we're using our mouse and we're pointing and clicking and adding in new features? Most of the graphical editors are going to use standard code. But again, we have an option of using multiple tools. Now, I know people who are still using Dreamweaver MX. And again, it's a good product. It makes basic pages. And for basic design, there's nothing wrong with it. You can go in and modify any of the code that it doesn't automatically support. Any of the bells and whistles that you want to add in there, you can manually add in through the code. Some people don't like Composer as it has an older look and feel to it. And again, doesn't have all the bells and whistles that Dreamweaver CS5 has. But again, it's good. It's a functional GUI editor that is perfectly usable. I typically, that's my product of choice typically when I'm working with some design projects. Being able to modify the code with the editor is what is essential. I was talking with someone the other day who was saying that we need to teach our students how to use applications and design technologies, and the rest of the skills will fall into place on the job, but they need to go in with that application knowledge under their belt and be able to include all of the bells and whistles that the application has so that they can complete their job. And I have to agree with that, as most design houses today need team players, people that can work but then also can understand code and can work well with others. having a portfolio is really important, but also possessing the soft skills, and we need to be able to collaborate and work on with the same technologies, and we need to be able to speak the same code as well. Validation is also very important, and I'm asked a lot of times, why do we have to go through this hassle of validating our code? Validating really does serve a purpose for us. It's very useful for us. We can use it as a debugging tool to find out code that doesn't work. We can use it as a future-proof quality check. So yeah, we might have some issues with our coding, and the page appears to display just fine within our browser window, but when browser technologies change, that code may not render correctly. So by using valid code within our work, by taking our work and validating it, making sure that it's meeting all the standards, even when some of the technologies are upgraded, we have less work to have to do with our code. Validation is also, basically a sign of professionalism. A lot of people would say, that if you are a really truly professional designer, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, and that if your page is validated for accessibility, if it's validated for cascading style sheets, if it's validating for XHTML, this really shows a mark that you've got attention to detail and you care about the quality of your work. Making sure that we can read all the errors that a validator tool comes up with is important, basically to determine exactly where our mistakes are. I know a lot of times my students would go into a website and they'll create the website and then they'll validate it and it'll come back with 9 million billion errors, and they'll really start to panic and go, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And one of the biggest things about that is you have to be able to go back and proofread your code. And my comment to teachers that go through this validation exercise is the same thing. It's have your students proofread your code. Proofread a couple of times, revalidate it, proofread again, and then come back to me if we're still having errors. Because a lot of times, being able to go in, find one error, which is typically a typographical error, fixing that code will fix several errors that the validator is reporting back all at once. There's an old saying of keep it simple. And that goes especially true with web design. It helps the readability of the site, it helps with validation, and it helps with search engine optimization. Busy, crowded pages actually become more of a hindrance and not very eye-pleasing. When using HTML elements such as white space, we can guide the visitor's attention to the vital message that the page is trying to get across. And then we can still present our message in multiple formats in a pleasing and interactive manner. We're basically just reducing the clutter and making the site more usable. Now we're going to shift attention just a little bit and talk about some social networking design and look at what some focus is there. Privacy and social networking. Privacy on the internet has always been a big concern. We could go back and find articles related to privacy on the internet, back in the early 90s. How do we keep information private? There's concern expressed by privacy and consumer groups that say websites are culling too much information about users and then creating detailed profiles and to be able to market and sell products and services based on these backgrounds of internet users, of what they're buying and watching and reading and sharing online. The Washington Post actually earlier this year in May printed an article discussing a new bill that Congress is working on to control internet privacy. And according to the Post, the bill that's been produced requires websites to clearly explain how they collect data and how they're using that information and how it's going to be stored. The concerns over online privacy have heightened with an explosion of social networking, by which users share information, they share pictures, they share videos about themselves. And we've seen this through Facebook, and Google's Buzz and MySpace, Flickr even, and YouTube. You know, all of these are sites that people are sharing information. And privacy advocates are really saying this bill really doesn't go too far. They're not pleased, for example, because there's a provision in this new bill that allows the company to share information with users within their organization. So in other words, we're collecting information about you, but oh, we have a sister company over here, and we're going to share your private information that we've collected about you with them. The Post even gives an example. The Washington Post could share user information that it collects with its educational partner, Kaplan, or other cable holdings that they work with. So, you know, privacy is a huge issue, and understanding how we're collecting and how we can use that information is very big. When working with social media, visitors want to be able to personalize the site for themselves as well. They want to customize the site so it meets their personalities. Or if it's a business, how is it going to improve or promote their company branding? Let's take a look at Twitter, for example. How can we customize a Twitter profile? Well, just as we mentioned, we need to verify first whether it's going to be our personal Twitter profile or whether it's going to be our corporate profile. And what resolution is going to be best? And are we going to use a tiled background or an untiled background? Twitter recommends actually that using images for the profile should be sized at about 700K with resolution of 72 dpi. Twitter also recommends that the image formats, they need to be either JPEG, GIF, or PNG files, pretty much our web standards. The other big thing is that you want to go back on these sites periodically because they're always revising and updating and adding new features. And so you want to be able to go back and see what new features or recommendations they have that you can apply to your profile and to your settings. Now here's just a basic example of a tiled background where we've taken an image and we've made it basically a watermark for the background and tiled it. So it's just a repeating image over the entire background of the page. And now we've got an untiled background, an untiled faded background. And this background has the color set to the edge of our image so that this way you can resize the window horizontally and vertical, and you won't see exactly where the edge of the page is ending. And this way, users with a widescreen desktop display can really stretch out the screen, and we're not going to lose the quality of the image. Another thing to keep in mind is the fact that in Twitter, in our example here, they have a header banner that's always going to be right at the top of your image, top of your page. So you need to make sure that your background, especially if you're using like a branding logo or something, is going to be out of the way of the header. So now we're going to change focus to browsers, because another essential step is being able to design our sites for use with multiple browsers and even mobile browsers. One of the big things that we've heard a lot about lately is the type of browsers that our audience is going to be using. What are they going to be using to view our sites? For years, it looked as if Internet Explorer was the clear winner of the browser wars, with market share reaching 99%. But over the past few years, things have heated up a bit, and now the browser wars are in full swing. Internet Explorer market share is decreasing on a yearly basis, and it depends on who you talk with about the size of this market share decline. Really is. But for right now, if you look at them and kind of look at all the stats that are presented to us, overall they're really coming down close to where, you know, they're fairly well close in market share, Firefox and Internet Explorer. I have a couple of links on this page with some interesting information about it. And the first link on this slide shows that really there's stable market share of about 27.5% for Firefox, and Internet Explorer stands at about 52%. And that's for U.S. And they're also showing that if we look at the European market, Firefox 3.6 is really the most popular browser in Europe with a share of about 29.85% versus 27.82% for Internet Explorer 8. So, again, still kind of showing that they're fairly well equal, but European market is liking the Firefox browser a little bit better. We also talk a little bit about Google Chrome and Safari. They're also popular browser choices. Chrome currently has about 10% market share, and Safari has about 8.5% share in North America. And if we look at worldwide usage, then Chrome is about 10.5%, and Safari is down to about 4.21%. Things are going to continue to heat up a bit, especially if we look towards this fall. Internet Explorer 9 is coming out. Firefox 4 is going to be released this fall. It's actually being beta tested right now. If you want to take a look at it, for Windows, for Windows clients, it does have a little bit look and feel. It's laid out a little bit differently. For Linux users, it still has the same look and feel as Firefox 3.6. But you can definitely download the beta version of it right now and take a look at it. Then there are the mobile browsers. Have you ever tried surfing on the web with a BlackBerry? I have, and trust me, it's not much fun. It doesn't render very well at all, the standard browser that comes with the BlackBerry. The other day, a friend of mine was showing me his Droid phone, and it was out surfing on the web and showing me what type of quality it had. And it was really very nice. But understanding the type of browser that our client is accessing our site through is a big thing. Maybe we go in and we run a browser check when the site is visited, a simple browser detection script. And then if we need to, we might have to redirect the visitor to another site that is styled in a manner that best suits a mobile small screen device. So then we can move on to actually talking about optimizing our pages. And we're going to talk about creating coherent, cohesive content. Now I want everybody to say that 3 times really fast, okay? But when we think about it, it's not really rocket science, but a lot of planning and attention to detail. This is what really separates professionals from the page creation tools that you can find anywhere on the web to slap together a website in just minutes. Okay, there's a lot of really interesting products that say, click here, fill in the blanks, and you've got your site in no time. Okay, but we are trying to create a precise message. Each page has its own message and a set of words, keywords, or phrases that relate to the context of that page, and still trying to fit in with the overall site. Take that one step further and make sure that each page on our site has a unique title that is specific to the page content, and incorporate the keywords and phrases on our page. And then we want to repeat the keywords and phrases throughout our page and use them meaningfully in our content, such as heading levels, okay, for those individual sections. This is going to be increasing the relevance of our page and the content to search engines when they're indexing our material. Obviously, we want to stay away from simply repeating words continuously around the page haphazardly in a way that really doesn't make any sense to us, or keep repeating the words in meta tags. Keyword stuffing, as it's referred to by search engines, will actually be a detriment to our search engine rankings, as engines will deduct from our ranking for using that practice. However, using those meta tags, using that metadata is still really useful. And shouldn't be left out when we talk about search engine optimization. Having our keywords and phrases that are specified and spelled out give the search engine an idea of what it's actually looking for as it's indexing. Other meta information is very important, such as controlling the way images are indexed from search engines. For instance, we may not want search engines to actually catalog or index our images on our site, so we can control that using meta information in our meta tags. Really, when it comes down to search engine optimization, we really just need to do a good job with designing the site. Act naturally and get the job done. Make sure that the site is created correctly using web standards, validate the content, and make sure that our server is configured and running correctly and the site is rendered correctly from it. Okay? Then we want to update our content. Continue to check and make sure that links work, update our content on a regular basis, and then resubmit those updated pages to the search engines again. Content is huge in increasing a site's performance. And if we want to attract visitors and have them to come back and visit our site again, we need to make sure that there is something for them to come back and see. No one wants to come back to a site if it's not being updated. One other thing to consider is the age of the site. Like fine wine, search engine optimization takes time. Yeah, that's true. How long has the site been around? How old is the domain name? It generally takes about 6 months for search engines to consider sites something more than just a fly-by-night setup, and it starts adding value to the site because it's got some age to it. Okay? Then we can also talk about pay-per-click, which is an internet advertising model used on websites where advertisers pay the host only when their ad is clicked. Okay? It's a way of attracting customers to the site. With search engine, advertisers typically are going to bid on keyword phrases relevant to the target market, and that's okay. It's one thing of doing it, but there is so much more involved in getting customers to our site, and search engine optimization plays a key role in our overall internet marketing scheme. Okay, so how do we come up with all of this stuff? How does it really all fit together? How do we get the skills that we can go through and work on all the things that we've been talking about to create a complete package? This is where CIW comes in. And CIW is, we have various certification levels, all the way starting with our CIW associate level certification that focuses in on what I refer to as Introduction to Information Technology. The CIW associate is composed of 3 individual components: Internet Business Associate, Site Development Associate, and Network Technology Associate. These can be 3 standalone offerings, or they can be packaged together into one offering, which composes the Web Foundation Associate. Say we're just starting out with it, and we want to get started in a career as a web designer. One of the first places that we can start in with is the Site Development Associate certification. It starts in with focusing on what web design is, how we can develop websites, what languages are being used, an introduction to cascading style sheets, project management, and how e-commerce has evolved, and introduction to technologies that are implemented with e-commerce. And then we move into our CIW design series, where we look at some of the professional level courses. Our Web Design Professional Certification encompasses 2 independent courses: Web Design Specialist and E-commerce Specialist. Our Web Design Specialist course is going to focus in on page layout elements, the aesthetics of the site, what type of art are we using on there. We're going to talk about technologies such as syndication. We're going to talk about website usability, which a lot of things we've been discussing so far this afternoon encompass. Navigation, animation, when is the best way to use animation, how are we developing it, how are we implementing it, and focusing in on meeting the needs of our web project management, our customer, and focusing in on our target audience. Then the e-commerce specialist is going to take that one step further. Most of our sites today that we're working on are including some sort of e-commerce package, and we want to be able to understand how this internet marketing is going to work in conjunction with a database, a shopping cart, transaction processing, and customer satisfaction and customer support. And all of this is going to be comprised in our e-commerce specialist course. Other titles that are of interest once we get through are our specialist certifications: the JavaScript certification, Perl, database design, and web security. Once we've designed the site and we're working on, have gone through our e-commerce, there's a lot more specialized skills that are required from web designers. Being able to interact with databases, being able to have a scripting language under our belt. And for those that are interested in web security, understanding how we're setting up firewalls, how we're protecting content off of a site. All of these are great skills that can help you succeed in the web profession. CIW brings you the web, and that we work on focusing in on project management, development skills, and security skills. And we do this in a way with hands-on projects so that students are actually going in and they're creating sites. Once they get done with the program, they have the ability to have an academic degree if they're going through an academic institution, industry certification from CIW that says that they've got the skills that employers are looking for, and then they have a portfolio to show potential employers what type of skills they've been working on and how they're created. So in conclusion, basically, we're taking a look at all of these cool tools that are available to us, but it's really as we go in and focus in on the different design standards, how we're using this to meet the needs of our audience and our customers. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, and if she can, Joe, if you've got questions that people have typed in, we'll take a look at them. I'll work on unmuting our guest and see if we have any questions from the floor.
Thank you, Stephen. Does anybody have questions they would like to type in? At this point, I do not have any typed in. Stephen has unmuted some of our folks as we're starting to hear some static in the background, so you're aware that you're about to be heard. So either type them in at this point, or if you want to just speak up and we'll answer it directly.
Into the class.
Excuse me?
If you click on course content, you should see a bunch of folders in front of your face. Okay. Yeah.
I think that's somebody talking to their class or to students, Joe.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we have one.
Okay, well, you need
We're
to go
getting a lot of feedback, so Stephen, we may want to mute everybody and then have people raise their hand and unmute them one at a time because we're getting quite a bit of feedback, and we do have a question in the question panel.
You shouldn't have anything about
okay with you?
quiz in
Muted.
I've gone ahead and muted everybody once again. So if you can Okay, Joe, you got the questions? Okay, Joe?
Yeah. Did we mute you too? Okay, so did you hear that question?
No, I did not.
Okay, so what would be the best certifications for someone who has been a web designer for 9 years but needs to upgrade their skills?
Great. Somebody has gone through and has been a designer. Then definitely one of the things that you want to take a look at would be the web design specialist certification, because that is going to bring in, you'd be able to bring in your skills as a designer for the in your history, and then being able to go through and see the type of technologies that are being talked about and addressed today, and being able to apply that, and then even take a look at the e-commerce specialist. That would probably be your best track to going through and picking up best practices that are being used today, as well as brushing up on some of the newer skills. So I think that would definitely be a good choice to go with.
Great. Our second question from Marjorie is, this was quite helpful. When will the printout of this presentation be available, and are there sections that there are sections that I'd like to review? And I can answer this question.
Great.
There will not be a printout of the actual Q&A. We can make available the slide presentation to you by sending it to everybody, which I believe is standard practice, so we can do that. But the recording of the presentation will be available on CIWcertified.com, and you can navigate to that through About CIW and then Webinars, or from the landing page, there's a webinar box that you can just click on, go directly to the page where you can find the recording. Okay. Next question from Randy is, how do I access CIW certified course content?
How do I access CIW course certified content? That's a great question. One of the things that you want to take a look at, I'll refer you off to the CIWcertified.com website, and there's a link in there for our certifications. And you can follow up with information about the individual certification that you have interest in, and you can see the available options that are there. For instance, if you're interested in just obtaining a student self-study kit, you can purchase it directly from the site, or if you're looking for an instructor-led course, there's a position there for you to be able to select and get access to a salesperson. That is correct, right, Joe? Joe
Yep.
does more of our marketing, and she probably has better response to that than I do.
Nope, you got it. You absolutely got it. If you are familiar with CIW, you know, the website is a great place for you to access it, but we also recommend, as Stephen said, to give us a call. The phone numbers can be accessed at our website. Also, I will put them here in the notes of this presentation, but give us a call and you know, talk to our salespeople about it. They're very knowledgeable, and they can help direct you to the right certification material.
Okay.
So next question. Oh, next question asks if you can you move the slide deck, Stephen, back to the previous slide?
Which slide? Contact information slide?
Well, you just.
Let's see.
Okay. Tammy, if that is not the right slide, please let us know, and we can get the slide to you you're looking for. Next question talks about the copy of the presentation, and we will send that out to the email address that we have for the attendees. Next question is your certification you offer considered to be par to Microsoft certification?
Which Microsoft certification?
Let me unmute this individual and.
Okay.
Okay. Harshendra, you should be unmuted. Can you hear us? Okay. This individual is unmuted, but I'm not hearing a response. So we will ask for more clarification and come back to that one later.
Okay.
Next question is from Graham. What are the relative merits of the various editors available at the moment?
Various editors. I'm assuming that we're talking about Expression Web, Dreamweaver, CS4, CS5, along that line. And if that's where we're going, then those editors they they have a lot of tools that are already built into them that make them very easy for quick web development. So, for instance, they're going to have Dreamweaver has a lot of AJAX tools that are built into it. So, for instance, you could implement on your site a Rolodex of a picture displayer, where it's going to flip through pictures and display them without having to go in and hand code it. So it has certain features that make the design process simple to do, and being able to add various different types of bells and whistles, such as the AJAX components. They'll also have components such as being able to upload our files with a built-in FTP editor, client, to our web server. They'll also have some validators built in to where they'll validate some code for us, as opposed to having to use the W3C validator. So there's just certain features that make them more usable than being able to be able to just enter and control code. And of course they have all the great things which I really need, like tools like spell check, to be able to go through and help out with some of the basic configurations with it. If it wasn't exactly what you were looking for, then please give us another question about it. Okay, Joe?
Okay, I did receive some clarification on the last question.
Great.
They were asking, is the reputation of CIW on par with the is the reputation on par and their web presence in general? And a secondary question to that was also, how is the CIW valued by employers in Canada?
In Canada, okay. About the way that we are with the rest of North America, in that I refer to it as one of the best kept secrets that there is. We are working, and Joe's department is working on getting industry notification out, about exactly what we are and what we do. So that is growing, and you can see from our advisory board that we do have representatives from like Google and Intel and HP that are recognizing the value of CIW certification. The smaller design shops, word is still getting out to them. And for instance, I was talking with one employer earlier this spring. We sit on the same advisory board for an institution, and they actually had a job positioning posting out there, and they had in there for qualifications Adobe Dreamweaver CS4 certified. And I asked him, I said, do you mean if somebody comes to you with Adobe certification and then another person comes in with CIW certification, you take the Adobe certified person over the CIW certified person, individual? And they said no. And that's when we started talking about what they're actually looking for. And they want to see communication skills, they want to see teamwork or collaborative skills, they want to see the portfolio, and that they can work in a varied environment. And he said, as an employer, I can teach an application in 2 weeks, but I can't teach this foundational skill set that an individual has to have. Can they recognize code? Can they go in and make tweaks at the command line? Can they, understand the difference between server-side and client-side scripting? Those are skill sets that he said, take longer to develop. Applications don't. So, yes, we're still getting out there, but, skill set that somebody has on their resume and in their portfolio are going to speak volumes to them. I hope that helps some.
Okay, I believe we have answered everybody's questions. Let me check through one last time to make sure I have not missed anything. Please feel free. We'll give you a minute here to type in any other questions you may have.
And while Joe's doing that, I'd just like to take a minute and thank everybody for coming today. I hope some of this information was useful to you. My contact information is on the screen, or at least I hope it is. It is on my screen. And please feel free to contact me with any questions that you have about our topic, or if I can be any assistance to you with CIW.
Stephen, I think we've answered all the questions. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and please join us again next month. We will be having another CIW webinar. The topic In September, we will be repeating our presentation that talks about the new CIW with all the new certifications. And in the first week of October, we will be teaching, or we will be discussing teaching CIW, tips, tricks, and traps. So thank you again for coming, and we will see you all again next month.